What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Scratch Agency Podcast, hosted by Scratch Agents for Scratch Agents. My name is Stephen Turnbull, founder of T5 Insurance Services in Clinton, New York. I'm joined by my co-host today, the one and only, you already know, hold your applause, Mr. Sean Fitzgerald, founder of LAF Advisors in Long Island, New York. Folks, we have an incredible episode for you today. We are live with some very special guests. We've got a special guest to talk to us about all things annual planning, agency planning, goal planning. And we'd like to welcome our guest on the show today. So help me welcome Mr. Brett Young, who is the CEO of Urban Young. Urban Young is a very successful scratch agency that has an incredible story. And you can find out more about that in episode 32 and 31. But Brett, thank you very much for being a great friend of the show. Thank you for joining us all here today. We got 16 folks on the call today from our Scratch Agency podcast community. So we appreciate everybody being here. But the floor is yours, Mr. Young. All you. Thanks again for being here.
That sounds like it was recording. So if you're listening to this podcast, I just want to let you know that was completely live. Just for all the listeners at home, if you really wanted to know how that worked. So I'm gonna have to step my game up, man. I don't know how to respond to that. I appreciate it.
Brought to you by AI.
Exactly. Is that really you?
Yeah.
Oh man, that's awesome. Well, I'm excited to be here. Obviously, all of you guys, this is really cool that you would do this. And you know, today is going to be more of a conversation than anything else. I think one of the coolest parts about this collaboration in a mastermind is hearing everybody's different perspectives. I think the power of the business that we're in is that we all have the same direction, but we all have different ways to get there. We all have different carriers. We all have different markets. We're in different markets. We have different processes. We have different types of agencies, right? If we surveyed everybody that was on this call today, there would probably not be one person or one agency like another. And that is, and its uniqueness is where it's really fun. So I love that. So today, my intention is to share with you, and specifically what Stephen and Sean wanted to do is just share how we do end of year planning. And there is no right or wrong. It's just how we do it. It's what I've done for the last decade. It's evolved. This is what we teach our operators in different markets. We have 7 different offices at this point. We're just under about 50 million in premium. We did Scratch start up just like everybody that's on this call and listen to this podcast. I mean, our first office was upstairs in a bonus room in my partner's house, and we did one policy at a time. So, and this process, it works with 10 policies on the books, and it works with 10,000 policies on the books. And it's been something that has shown as a really cool roadmap for us, because I think all of you would agree that the road is messy. It never goes exactly the way that you anticipate it going. You have to have a plan to get somewhere, but the plan that you set out to do usually isn't the plan that gets you there. There's usually these windy roads, and there's these pivots, and there's these curveballs that get thrown at us, and there's challenges, and there's triumphs, and there's opportunities that pop up, and there's all these different splits in the road with forks, and we have to choose to decide which road we're going to take and which decision to make. And someone had told me a long time ago that a successful life is made up of a lot of really great decisions. And for me, my roadmap and my goal planning and our goal planning allows me to make better decisions. When I'm faced with an opportunity and I don't know if I should take it, and I'm faced with it could be a budget cut, it could be personnel, it could be do I want to go into this market? Do I want to get really aggressive this year? And we'll get into that in a second. I have to have some sort of benchmark, and my partners and I have to have some sort of benchmark to say, hey, what's the filter in which we're making decisions this year? And you and I both know that different seasons in different years are different than previous years, right? We're all in different places based upon our timelines and where we're at. And so the end of year planning allows to just be this roadmap, to be this kind of this document that allows me to come back to it and say, okay, am I making the right choice here? Like, does this align with the intention for the year? And if it doesn't align with the intention of the year, that is okay too. It's okay to change your mind, and it's okay to pivot. It's okay to do something different. But I don't think it's okay to do something without acknowledging that it wasn't in your plan. I think one of the biggest challenges that we have is that we make decisions based upon it sounds like a good idea instead of making a decision that's aligned with where we're trying to go. And as long as we can acknowledge that we're changing our mind and that we're changing and shifting what our intentions are for the year, I think that's okay, because there are secondary consequences for that. But at least if we're going in eyes wide, open, at least we're making an intelligent decision. Because I don't know about you guys, but I've made decisions along the way where I look back and go, man, that didn't really align with where we were trying to end up. And it's either delayed my progress, it's either made it really, really difficult. And a lot of these bigger decisions have 6 months, a year, 2 years worth of lag on the consequences that come from that. And so they have their big choices to make. So it's just a guiding roadmap. And I think also to share with some of you, I'd love to get perspectives that's on the call. I could see most of you. Some of you have your camera off. That's okay. Would you just how many people have partners, and how many people are solopreneurs? They're just them right now, or they're just the principal of their agency. If you have partners, maybe raise your hand, hit the raise hand button. I'd love to know, how many people have, a person or persons that they're running their agency with. I see one. Josh. Okay. Anybody else? Cool. So I have 2 partners. So that gives me good perspective, because and most everybody's here is the sole principal of their agency. This is even more important for you, because as the sole person who's running your agency, you don't have to necessarily be accountable for the different decisions that you make. And that is challenging, because it's easy to make those decisions when you don't have to justify it to a board, you don't have to justify it to partners. The best example is I've worked with different operators, and they dictate their income for the month based upon how much commission they wrote last month, right? It's not based upon a set amount that they're paying themselves. And so, and it all stems back to the fact that if we have some sort of document and we've set the intention of what it is, and we've basically made other people aware of what those are, and we're working with other people, like the people on this call, it allows us to be accountable to the things that we said were important to us. Does that make sense? Cool. Awesome. Good stuff. So let's do this. I have a couple documents that I'm going to go through these are all internal documents. Nobody has seen this before. This is only Urban Young team members at this point. So I'm excited to share it with you guys. And again, I would love to get perspective on your goals. Some of you, I'd love for you to share kind of where you're at and what you're looking to do. I'm going to share with you some of my personal goals. And the other thing I'm going to share with you guys today is I'm going to share numbers. One of the things that was frustrating me when I was, scratch startup is nobody wanted to share numbers. It was like that arbitrage thing where, you're either flaunting what you've done or you're scared to tell people what you've done. So you talk on these abstract things, and I wanted to know, like, hey, where am I at? And, am I doing okay? And is my benchmarks where I need to be? I enjoyed that. That was important. So if I have your permission today, I'm literally going to open up my stuff and share with you, just for the purposes of drilling down some questions and maybe shed some light on maybe how we do it. So if that's cool, Stephen, I don't know if I have control, if I can do that. But I would love to share my screen here. So okay, cool. So let's go here first. All right. You guys can see that? Everybody shake their head. Everybody can see that? All right, cool. Is that the full? Let's see here. Get this to where you can see the whole thing. All right, so the first thing I would ask you guys is end of year planning is not about 1 year. It's about a bigger perspective. And I don't know about you guys, but my goals and aspirations, they change. The direction usually is very congruent and consistent, but sometimes I change. You could have an acquisition and you could double your size overnight. And the next year, your 5-year goal now is different because all of a sudden you doubled in size, right? So for me, what we like to do is I like to start with a 5-year vision. And I like to say, hey, where if I accomplished what I wanted to accomplish, like, what does this look like? And the way that I was always taught to do this was do this from a standpoint of writing a story of what my day looks like, right? Not my size, not what it looks like for my office. Like, what does my day look like? So I wanted to kind of read this to you real quick, and I just give you an idea. But I mean, sensory is super important. Description is very important. You know, my dad always told me, like, hey, what does your perfect day look like? And that always stuck with me, because it's like, that's what matters in life. Like, that's why you're building this business. It's not all this other stuff that we get lost in. For me, it's like, what does my perfect day look like? That's what I'm chasing. So for me, I like to write down what is the 5-year vision, and act as if I'm experiencing it in real time. So I'll read you this first paragraph. I won't read the whole thing, but I wanted to share this so you guys have an idea of maybe this would be helpful for you. So this is what I wrote. This was 4 years ago. I woke up to no alarm today, 6 a.m., ready to go. The smell of fresh, hot coffee lures me out of bed. The promise of a productive, fulfilling morning. Around 7 a.m., Carter's up, which is my son, and I have to continually beg him not to wake up his sister. I figure one more year and these sleep-in sprints will be finished, and I'll have 2 little monsters on my hand. After my reading, a workout, and meditation, I'm ready for my favorite part of the day, taking my kids to school in the golf cart. It's an incredible fun way to take. It's this chilly ride on the golf cart to drop off Harley and Carter off at the same school down the street. The morning neighborhood chatter, the morning waves to the cross guards, and the fresh air is magical to my soul. So I won't read you the rest of that, but essentially I talk about taking them to school, coming back when I want to. The day has already started. I don't feel the pressure of, the phones ringing, and being able to, have control over my life. And so for me, that really set the stage of, like, what is it that I'm doing and what is it that I'm looking to achieve and accomplish. So I would encourage you to really write that down. Sometimes we think about what we want the next year, but it's very difficult sometimes for people to think of 5 years. And I would encourage you not to think revenue numbers. I'd encourage you to think what your lifestyle looks like. So that's one. And then the second one I wanted to share with you guys is this. This is a strategic planning for the actual business itself. Well, let's do this first before I jump into that, because I think this is where we'll have some really cool questions, and I'd like to ask you guys kind of your goals. Let me share you with this. This is the second thing that we'll do when it comes to the end of year planning. So I do this every year. I've done this for a very long time. You guys can see that, our template. Yeah, perfect. So how you write your goals. Probably everybody in here has done a goal workshop, and everybody does it different. You've heard of SMART goals. You've heard of different things that are going to allow you to be specific and measurable, and time element attached to it. All that, I fundamentally believe that it's a great way to do it. For me, this is the template that's worked out the best. It's simple, it's easy, and for me, it gives me a better clarity on why it's important and what I'm going to give up. I think that success demands a cost. Anything and everything that we're going after in life has to have some sort of cost. It has to have a price attached to it. And I think a lot of times we put out what we want, but there are a lot of people that I've worked with that say that they want things, but there's a difference between wanting something and desiring something, having a burning hot white desire for something. If you have a hot white desire for something, you're willing to give up a lot to get it. And the idea of a price tag associated with it sometimes will deter somebody. I've had team members that say they want to get into sales because they want to make more money. But then when it comes to going to an open house on a Saturday, they don't want to do that because the price to become successful in sales is bigger. And so then they find that out, they've gone back to service, and they're okay with that. But they wanted to make more money, but they weren't willing to pay the price that was associated with that. So now they're set back into, okay, you know what? I got this pretty good. I like this. So the idea is that everybody wants to make more money. We all want to grow our business, but what is the price that is going to take in order to do that? So what I do is I write out a specific goal, and this is personal goals for me first, guys, before we get into business planning. So for me, I usually will do a net worth goal. To me, that's the scoreboard, specifically in this business. And then I do have a plan to get there for the year. I write out that plan. And then what price am I going to pay to get that goal this year? And to me, this is a huge one. This is a huge one. And if you say, I don't really have to pay a price, well, then your goal's not big enough, number one. And two, you're probably delusional because everything has a cost. If getting up early requires you to give up sleep, right? Investing money requires you to give up control and security. There's always a trade-off. We live in a polarity world. That's just how it works. So at least recognizing that, it tunes into the fact that, hey, this pain or this friction that I'm meeting that's uncomfortable, perfect, I'm on the right track, right? And then why is this goal important to me? If I can't give a strong enough reason why the goal is important to me, it shouldn't be on my sheet. So it's a kind of a reminder to me that, like, sometimes we make goals to because they're cliche and they're not really important to us. You know, my brother and partner Taylor had said a long time ago, it took him 5-6 years to actually put goals down with integrity that were specific to him, that he cared about. He was always writing goals because he knew that he had to read it to somebody. So he wanted to sound good when somebody read it to him, right? Like, we're all guilty of that. We all have insecurities with that. But being authentic to you, for me, if I have a why of why that's important, for me, it allows to have transparency. So, and I'll give you a quick example of the 2023 goals I had. So give you basically an idea of what that looks like. I think everybody could see that, which is good. So I had a net worth goal that I wanted to be at the end of 2023. I had a plan to get started. It was basically a top line revenue number of how much we needed to grow the business. And then what price was I willing to give up with that? And for me, it was, at night, I like to go to sleep and know that everything's fine. I got enough money in the bank. I got enough security. The kids are good. The family's good. This year I was willing to give up some of that control and get really aggressive. And so there are nights that you're laying in bed going, man, I don't know how this is going to work out. Like, there's a lot at stake. Like, this is tough. Like, this isn't going the way it is. And I'm reminded that that's okay. That's part of the plan. Right. And then the one that, I wanted to have a date night with my wife. So I scheduled it and I wasn't doing a good job with that. And we executed that. So I had her hold me accountable. We put it on the calendar. I moved some work events around because the price I was willing to pay is, hey, if it's on the calendar, I'm not scheduling anything. So I missed some stuff. I missed some team stuff. And then the last one, we wanted to hire a finance director. And, essentially that was going to come out of quarterly bonuses for the partners, right? It wasn't something that was a situation where there's money in the budget for it. So from a standpoint of what we were willing to give up, it was going to be income. But at least we knew going, and we did end up doing all these, but when we made the decision to hire that finance director, I mean, it was a shot to the jugular, and all three of us looked at each other and said, okay, well, we already made the decision that this is what it's supposed to feel like. So let's go ahead and make that happen, which is cool. And then for a fitness goal, I was able to really do that, and which was really cool. But, obviously it's not without pain. It definitely came with a cost. But so what I wanted to do before we jump into this next section, which will be really fun, and this will get to really kind of the business planning, I wanted to just get an interaction with you guys and ask you how do you do your personal goals first for the year? Do you do your business goals first for the year? Do you do both of them at the same time? I would just love to maybe get some different perspective, obviously, because everybody does it different. So if you're willing to share, go ahead and unmute yourself, and I'd love to hear.
I can start if you want. Brett, I know you and I talked about this a little bit, but this year I would say is the first year that I was hyper focused about goal planning and did the little, I think a lot of you saw it on social media, did my own little summit with just me, myself, and I. And we rented an Airbnb, and my wife went to the spa during the day, and then I did planning. But the cool part about that was for the first hour and a half, Michaela and I met about what we wanted our lives to look like personally, and did that before I got into the business stuff. And it was, I don't really know, I didn't go in with any expectations, but after the day, I remember calling Sean. I'm like, I just feel so much clearer. And I have that in a Google Doc, and I look forward to being able to go back in 20 years and say, hey, remember when our personal goal was this back in 2024? Remember when the business goal was this? And I was in this Airbnb by myself doing these planning. So it was super cool to be able to do that. And I would say, transparently, this is the first year that I really kind of honed in and did something like that. And it was awesome.
Dude, that's awesome. I know you sent me that text that morning, and man, I was just tickled to death because I know what that, number one, regardless of what you got out of it, the price that you are willing to pay in order to gain clarity is just worth so much. It's called active faith. Like, you're willing to pay money and time and resources in order to get something out of it, regardless if you got something out of it because you're willing to make the deposit. It's funny how the world works. The universe is just willing to give you a withdrawal, right? You've earned the ability to extract that, man. So like, that's cool. I didn't get to talk to you obviously afterwards. That's really cool. I'm sure you gained massive clarity from doing the personal goals first. Um, did it shift your business planning because of maybe what she had talked about or what you guys discussed, or was it in line with what you thought it was?
I would say it was pretty in line, but I think being able to do the personal stuff earlier or before the business stuff allowed me to be more clear of what my objectives were for the business stuff, if that makes sense.
Really cool.
So yeah, I would say it was pretty in line.
That's cool. Yeah, and to have buy-in from your spouse and to bring them into the process is really, really powerful, because we all know that's the biggest support system at home. So that's awesome. Anybody else want to share?
Yeah, I'll take a stab. I actually, what I'm learning from this whole process, just listening to you, Brett, I full transparency, I need to do a better job of planning out my personal goals, because when I focused on my goals, I use the vision tracker through the EOS system, and it's all business oriented stuff, you know. So I would say I do have one personal goal, and I didn't get fully there this year, but I always had this goal to take my whole family, including my wife's side of the family, on like a family vacation. You know, that's been a big goal of mine. And this year I was able to take my sister-in-law and her kids. I couldn't pay for everybody. I'm still on that scratch agency budget.
Yeah.
But I was able to do a little piece of that. So that felt really good. But
dude, that's incredible.
That's something I definitely need to work on.
Dude, that's awesome. That's awesome. And I'm sure there was a moment where you're like, should I do this or not? You know, I know I said I was going to do it, but now I got to actually pay the money, you know? And I mean, you talk about reinforcing the process. Like, the cost of not doing what you say is so devastating to your personal psyche. It's just so devastating. Who cares about for a second, who cares about your commitments to everyone else? The commitments to yourself are just so infinitely more important, because you either reinforce that you're a person that does it, or you reinforce that you're a person that doesn't do it. When you put down these goals, if you're somebody who's done this every single year and you've conditioned your subconscious mind that you achieve whatever you put down, you'll get there. But if you kind of do it and then put it down and then don't do it, and you put it down but you forget what you did and you don't really,
I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to send this lady her policy stuff.
Hey, Matt, you're unmuted. Can you mute yourself, please?
Sorry, buddy. So it's this reinforcement of what you said you were going to do, right? It's like you're creating this container of an identity that you're an achiever. You're an identity of somebody who does what they say they're going to do. And if you can live through that consistently, you're just reinforcing the fact of who you are. So that's really cool, Sean. That regardless of what you wrote down, the fact that you did it and actually executed on that, it's the same thing with Steven, man. That's really, really cool, man. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Well, cool. Well, thank you for sharing that. If anybody has anything they want to share, obviously pipe in. So I'd really love to hear from everybody.
So I've always started my planning with my personal goals, and I've always tried to create at least one personal goal that is extremely challenging. And recently I read about it, and got an better understanding of what I was doing, even though I didn't realize it. And it's setting a goal that you have a reasonable chance of failure. So instead of setting easy goals that you can achieve so you can pat yourself on the back, set goals that you possibly might fail, but learn from that process. So I've always started my year planning with that, and then set up other personal goals for me personally, health-wise, health and fitness, and finance, and then family goals. And then from there, I develop a theme for the year for the business, and then build my year goals based on that theme. So it work in that direction. So last year was our theme for the business came out of some of the things I was doing personally, was surprise and delight. The benefit of having that theme changed a lot of our activities throughout the office, but it all stemmed from what was I trying to do personally, and then expanded out into my business ventures.
That's really cool. That's a nugget, by the way. That's a huge one. It's Donald, right?
Yes, sir.
That's really cool for you to share that. I do the same thing. Last year was called Execution is Worship. And it was just like, it's about execution. It's not about ideas. It's not about innovation. It's about, getting gritty and, doing the stuff that's non-sexy. So, and I don't know about you, but for me, that helps with me focusing like singularly on the filter, right? Like, does this align with my filter? And for you to say surprise and delight, when something comes into your peripherals about surprise and delight, you immediately go, oh, damn, that's a priority this year. Or somebody else has it. It's a priority this year. And
We've done that a number of years because I think it's important, and we'll go so far as I don't have one right now, but we did a few years ago, we did we love helping people. That was and then 2 years ago was be intentional. And so we've fully branded, we stickers and everything like that. Like, it's everywhere across. So it's a reminder that this is our focus. And now we don't stop being intentional, but this year we're going to be intentional about surprise and delight kind of thing. So I think that from a culture standpoint, it really gets the team together and keeps us all focused the same direction. And it helps us on our personal goals as well. Cause I think that that's what I want them to do is take the things we're doing here and then put them into their personal lives so they can improve themselves personally. And even if that means they outgrow our office, great, good for them. But at least they left better than they started.
hell yeah, man. I want to come work for you. That's awesome. That's really cool, man.
I can't afford you.
That's cool, man. No, but that's if you have an overall theme that comes from your personal goals to you to how you're going to run the business that year, people are going to want to align their goals so it meets the company goals, right? If they're bought in, they're going to say, okay, cool, that's what we're running towards. Oh, there's an objective this year. Oh, there's a theme. Oh, that's fun. Okay, how can I align with that? Because now I'm a part of something bigger than myself. And now you're getting multiple minds involved with one purpose, and that's explosive, man. So thank you for sharing that. That's really cool. That's awesome. Well, cool. Well, again, if somebody has something that triggers them and they want to share, that's where the magic is here. So please just unmute yourself and jump in. So what I wanted to do for the next part of our call is kind of get gritty with it, like tactical, like how we do this, like from the numbers standpoint, right? So end of year planning, the business itself, the agency, where are we at? Where are we going? What do we want? What's important? What is the methodology? This is a step-by-step document that we use to discover and then also set those goals. So what you'll see is a level of discovery questions to really kind of get to the bottom of what is important this year. And then it will give basically a progression of what we need in order to get to our 5-year target. And then it breaks it down by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So every single year, we're scaling out the 5-year plan. We're not just writing goals, we're writing our goals for the year. But as far as our plan is concerned, I want to work in 5-year blocks. I want to know, how does this impact the next couple years, right? It's just very simple. Like if I'm driving to get somewhere, I want to know the whole map before I start driving, right? I don't want to know what the next 200 miles is. I want to know what the 1,000-mile journey looks like, and then I'll start driving the car. So real quick. So here's a couple of discovery questions that I think would be helpful for you if you're going to do this for yourself. What do you want out of this experience? At the end of this experience, when you look back, what are you going to be grateful for that you achieved or that you experienced? And again, I bring this back to personal for me personally, because the business is a vehicle for me and my team to be able to obtain what they want, right? That's the purpose of this container. The more successful we become, the more that people get what they want. The more successful we become, the more good that we can do, the more lifestyle we have, the more it impacts people's lives, including myself, selfishly. I mean, it's important to me. Lifestyle is what I'm after. So what do I want out of this? And for me, relationships are one of the biggest ones on that list, as far as, just the people that you see on this call and the ability to be able to collaborate and when you're all said and done. So, and then also being able to leave a legacy. I want to be mentioned in people's testimonials for a very long time, that I, made an impact in them being able to do something really special with their life. So for me, that really kind of drives my reason. But maybe you you have a different reason. Maybe there's something that resonates, but maybe there's another specific reason. Maybe you got into business because of something that happened to you or something that occurred. And so what are you most grateful for when this thing is done? And to me, this is kind of like that North Star. It's just a different way to ask yourself why you're doing it. But for me, it's like, hey, when you're looking back, what is that one thing? And then, so after we get that North Star and we've kind of drilled that out, then I like to get really gritty with our operators and ask them, what is the least amount of money that you can make to support your current lifestyle? And I think this is very relevant for everybody that's on this call or listening to this podcast, because you started this business for a reason, and there's a reason that you probably took an income hit to start this dream and to build this container and build this vehicle. And there's no way, there's no shape, or there's no, getting away from the fact that there are some things that are in contradiction in order for us to get what we want. And one of them specifically is how much income we take, because it doesn't allow us to have as much fuel to throw on the fire. But knowing what this is, but the other end of the spectrum is if you take nothing, you have too much stress at home. You have stress at home, you're not able to focus. It's not a good structure, right? And then the other is you take too much and you bleed the business dry. So there's this equilibrium that has to occur in order for us to be at an optimal place to be able to get to what we want to achieve and do it sustainably, if that makes sense. So we drill down and say, what are your bills? Where are you at? What do you need? What is the least amount that you can have for your current lifestyle? I didn't say downgrade your lifestyle. I didn't say take it down a step, but I just said, what is it right now as it is? What is that number? And we pick a number. We don't move on until we pick a number. This would be good for you to know. This is going to force you to look at your budgeting. It's going to force you to look at what your bills are. Focus on what your household needs and get that number. If you don't know what that number is, you're just guessing. You're going to be, some months are good, some months are bad. You're going to end up in crisis mode, or that is just stress that nobody needs. It's very important for me at the beginning of the year. I go, how much do I need in order to maintain the lifestyle that I have? Boom. Now I have a number. That doesn't mean I'm not going to take a raise. That doesn't mean I'm not going to take more owner benefit. It just means I need a starting point. I need to know what my benchmark is. So I write that number down. And then the next part is a process that we developed that we'll get to some that are leading questions to get to priorities. We have 3 priorities every single year that we've done that are extremely helpful. And I would encourage you, this has been very helpful for me, and I would write this down. There's 3 things I think that are strategic initiatives, and there are only 3 in an agency and in a business in general, for me personally. One is infrastructure build. Are you going to build infrastructure this year? Are you going to invest in technology? Are you going to invest in people? Are you going to have more office space? Are you going to get an office space? There's infrastructure build that is required in order to grow a business, right? You have to build the roads before you drive the car. So there's infrastructure build that goes in. That usually takes a lot of resources and money. Number 2 is cash on hand, right? Successful businesses and healthy businesses have cash reserves. Okay. Which is interesting because infrastructure is in direct conflict with cash reserves, isn't it? Right. And then there's the third, which is owner benefit. What you take home, owner's comp, I should say, because equity build is part of owner benefit too. But we'll say owner's comp at this point. So there's 3 things that I think are strategic initiatives and that we've always done, and it's important to prioritize them. Which one is most important in order? And it's very likely that every year it's going to change because you're in a different season. But there is one bottom line fact, is they're all in direct conflict with each other, right? You can't do all 3 and do it all at 100%. So finding out what season you're in is very important, because this will allow you to make better decisions and map out your year. So these are the things that we ask people. What are these most important things to you? If you went down these, I believe there are 9 questions. Which one is most important to you? Significant revenue growth in my business, making more income, feeling more secure in case things don't go to plan, building cash up for opportunities that come up later, not missing out on missed referral partners or cross-sell opportunities, being able to get more and market more, making my significant other feel my progress, That's an important one. We need to make sure that the person at home that's supporting us feels good about what we're doing. That is a big one. People don't acknowledge that, but it's a big one. Create more personal liquidity in my household. I know when we were bootstrapping in the beginning, I didn't have $1 to my name. Everything's in the business and I'm just running it thin. And the reality is that at some point it comes along where, I'd like to build some cushion at home. So I can have the pressure at work, but I don't have the pressure at home. So that's important. And then reduce the pressure that I feel to pay the agency's monthly fixed and variable expenses, right? I don't want to have to worry about if I'm going to make payroll this month. That would be a very important thing to me in different seasons. Okay. These different questions are there's a lot of other questions, but at the end of the day, they flow into us being able to rank these three things: cash reserves, infrastructure, owner compensation. So I would just encourage you right now, if you'd play with me for a second, this next year, taking that into context, write this out on your journal. And if you had to make a decision right now, what would be your number one priority based on these three things? And then what would be your second? And then what would be your third? If you had to rank them.
Owner benefit number 1.
You're right, Sean.
Infrastructure number 2, and cash on hand number 3. That's what I would do.
I love that. Thanks for sharing. That. Anybody else want to share?
Got to keep the wife happy.
That's right.
I think
Mine is
I would
exactly.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry, mine's in the order: infrastructure, cash, owner benefit.
Cool.
That's mine.
Cool. Love that.
Mine would definitely be owner compensation, cash reserves, then infrastructure.
Okay. Awesome, man.
Mine is infrastructure, cash reserves, and owner comp.
So say that again.
Infrastructure. And as I look at my goals, that's pretty much how they're aligned, which is building infrastructure, investing into people and our systems, cash on hand, increasing revenue, and third, owner's comp.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. That's great. Cool. Yeah. So the reason I bring this up and I stay here, because this, if you don't identify this and you don't rank this, you're going to get very frustrated throughout the year, because you're going to want to invest in infrastructure, but then you're going to want to take more owner's comp, and you're going to be frustrated on why you can't do it. Right. Or you're going to build infrastructure and then you look at your bank account and go, damn, man, it's just, it's not, I don't know why. I'd really like that number to be bigger. It's like, we have to acknowledge where we are and accept where we are and be okay with the secondary consequences from picking a direction and going. And when you pick a direction and you go, just know that it is in direct conflict with some of the other things. So for me, it gives me peace to know that there have been situations, even in the last 2-3 years, that we get into like November, December, and that's our slower time. And the last year we had to pull out of a credit line because we had made some really big infrastructure builds in our slow time. And even though I knew that we were going to do that, like emotionally, it messed me up a little bit, because I'm like, man, is this responsible? Is this really what we want to do? And it ended up being a very good decision. It was exactly how it looked on paper, exactly how it played out. But emotionally, I would have second guessed myself if I didn't, if the partners didn't look at each other and say, no, this is what we're doing, because that's hard to do. Right? It's hard to do, because when you look at this, I don't know you guys, it's like, no, I want all three. No, and in the macro, we can get all three, but in the micro, we have to pick what direction we're heading. Does that make sense? And so we pick this every single year, and the three of us have a discussion, and not all of us line up every year. You guys just mentioned all yours. Everybody had a different answer. So imagine three guys getting in a room, and one person's, home life says, hey, I really, really would like to have some more owner's comp. It's about time for us to take a raise. And the other person's going, man, I really want to hire 2 more producers, And so you have to have this conversation and this collective logical argument, which is not an argument, it's a discussion, but to come to a realization to where we're holding each other accountable and the greater good of the company is what wins out. So that's why I like, and you could do that with just mastermind partners. You could do that with people in this group, but I would highly encourage you to have this conversation and walk through why you get there, because it's going to allow you to have a logical argument as to why that's important to you. right? If it's just owner's comp, but you can't really justify why that would be because it's in direct conflict with where you want to be in 5 years. Once you start articulating that to somebody, be like, yeah, it's just emotional. I just want to make more money, So I think it's a very important exercise. Here's the second part of that. It's going to change. It's a cyclical process. Usually the way it works for us is it goes infrastructure, cash, owner's compensation. We usually take a raise every 3 years. That's been our formula. And we usually take a big raise. So it's exciting. It's not something where you don't feel it. No, you come home and your spouse is like, "How you going?" It's like, "I got to sit you down. I got something exciting to tell you tonight." Right. And it's badass because that's what we work hard for. Right. And it's fun. Right. And it pulls them along the journey. But for me, that's what all has been worked really well for us. And we know what season we're in. So it's nice. You get the bite the bullet infrastructure stress, that's usually stressful. Then you get the cash reserves. It puts you at ease a little bit, but you get antsy because you're like, man, I see the bank account. There's a lot of cash in here. I could really take more comp, but you just stay disciplined. And then the third year, you're able to really reap those rewards. And you've usually moved top line. You're in a better cash flow position, and you're able to take that additional comp. Plus, the cash reserves stay where they're at because your cash flow position was increased. So, does that make sense? Cool. All right. So I'll move through this. This is where we go taxable income, owner benefit, net worth, right? I think these are the three things that are very important for you to understand. What's on your actual taxable income, right? So what's on your K1? Then you have your current owner benefit, which is the equity increase in your business, right? It's taxable income plus how much valuation you grew your business plus whatever other expenses are buried in your P&L that are really owner benefit, your cell phone, maybe your car, all these different things. So I like to look at, okay, what is my taxable income right now? What is the true owner benefit? Because that's the reason you're in this business. I want owner benefit. Taxable income is just for me to pay my bills. I want the owner benefit. I don't get taxed on that. That's way better than income. Income just allows me to have the lifestyle, but owner benefit allows me to get rich. That's number two. And then third is what's my net worth? What's my net worth, right? And it gives me a scoreboard on where I'm at. Then the second part of that is I want to write out what my typical workday is. And a lot of people that are on this call, this will resonate with you. You might be the person that's answering the phone for service. You might be the person that's taking all the sales calls. You might be doing the books. You might be doing everything, right? So what does your typical workday look like? Write this out. This is extremely important because and this is the last part, how much of your income is coming directly from your efforts? You started an agency. You're a business owner. You got into this business because you want leverage, right? Leverage is, in my opinion, one of the only reasons you want to start an agency. Otherwise, you can make more money being a producer, right? At least in the beginning. So understanding how much of your income is derived directly from your efforts is important because this is the game you're in. So I want to know what this percentage is. And then I go from 5 years from now, I do the exact same thing, except I say, what do I want my desired income to look like? What do I want my owner benefit that year to look like? And what do I want my net worth to be? And these, by the way, these are one because this is a form fill document. And so you put in the number and then it basically calculates everything out for you later on in the document. So just fill in whatever works for you guys. And then I want to describe my workday. Maybe I was answering service calls, sales calls, and doing the books. Now I'm literally in lead gen all day. I'm just in lead gen, and that's my typical workday in 5 years. Or I'm in team building and training. I'm in macro strategic planning, running the business, hiring, all these different things, whatever that is. And then write out what is your desired percentage of your income directly from your efforts. Now, is this subjective? Yeah, you're not going to have a calculated formula, but you can have an idea. Do you want 20% of the income coming from 20% of your efforts? Or do you want, I want my income, 1% of it to be from my efforts, right? Paul J. Getty, I believe, said, I would rather have 1% of 100 people's efforts than 100% of my own, right? And that's what you're after. That's leverage, okay? And then for here, this is what we do. This basically gives you a breakdown. Maybe some of you have asked yourself the question, what is my profit? What should my profit margin look like if I do it all myself? What should my profit margin look like once I start building a team? And I think the answer is you have to decide what's important to you. I've talked to operators and they don't want to have as much leverage as I do. Like I want infinite leverage. That's the only thing that's important to me in regards to from a business standpoint. Like I want That is very important. I'd rather make less money and build a bigger business if I have leverage and lifestyle, because I started my personal goals, right? That's just important to me. Okay. But somebody else might be like, no, it's just about my number that I take home. Right now, that's way more important. So they are okay with more of their income being linked to their efforts. This is very important for you to define, because there is no getting around it. The less percentage of your efforts contributing to your income, the bigger business that you have to build in order to get there. It's just logical, right? If I'm doing a lot of the work, I don't have to have as big of a business to make the same amount of money. If I do very little as far as binding business is concerned, to make the same amount of income, I have to have a bigger business, right? But I have more lifestyle, I have more leverage. So defining where you end up in this process will allow you to figure out what your actual profit margin is going to be, right? So we broke it down into 3 groups. So you have A, B, and C. A means most of your income is not derived personally from your efforts. Call it a 25% margin, okay? 16 to 30% of my efforts contributes to revenue. Let's call that a 35% margin. 31 to 50, call that a 45% margin. Some of you have higher margins than that because it's just you and maybe one employee, right? It's maybe high. Your income is derived from more than 50%, right? You're doing most of it. That's okay. That's normal in the beginning. But beginning with the end in mind, thinking about how you want it to look, I think this is very important because it allows you to set the stage of, should I hire? Do I need a team? What does a team look like? Why is it important? And it allows to have that conversation, like Brad said, as far as infrastructure is concerned, right? So knowing what is important to you is going to drive those decisions, all right? And once you get this percentage, I take the desired income that I wanted that was up here, divided by the percentage, and that's going to give me what my target gross revenue is going to be. Your target gross revenue. So if you wrote this down, put your income that you want, divided by the percentage, either 25%, 35%, or 45%. And that's going to give you your target gross agency revenue in 5 years. Okay. And then the next step is the fun part. So what we do is we take the current agency revenue of where you're at. We put the target agency revenue that you just came up with. And you want to know, what is the compound growth rate that you need in order to get there in 5 years? And compound growth rate, what I mean by that is, how much growth do I need each year in the same amount of growth every single year in order to get to where I need to be? So if I go 25%, 25%, 25%, 25%, 25%, that'll get me where I need to be. If it's 30%, 30%, 30%, 30%. And I'll show you how to do that. This is a really cool exercise. I think you'll love this. I do this every single year because it gets me excited about what the future looks like, right? So if I have this, yep, I do have this up. So I'll show you right now. Can you guys see that? Let's see. Did that show up?
Yep. Just
okay. Perfect. Okay. So here's the calculation that you do. Under present value, do your current agency revenue. And I could send this link, by the way, Stephen, if you want to get this out to the community. We'll put it in the community. Shout out if you listen to this and you're not in the community, join the community. Put the present value, so your current agency revenue, put a negative number below. So this one, I'd say, hey, I'm $100,000 in gross commissions this year. I want to get to 500,000 in 5 years. Personally, I would aim for significantly higher than that, but I'm just going to give it to you for purposes of demonstration. This period of time is 5 years. I'm going to hit calculate. It's going to give me this. So I have a 37.97% compound growth rate to get to where I need to be in 5 years. It is crystal clear what I need to achieve in order to get my goals. To me, the holy grail in this business is growth rate. It's growth rate. Profit margins don't matter, because you can always fix profit margins. It's very easy to fix profit margins. That's why companies will buy it for multiples, because it's like, okay, perfect. I can go in, I can fix any margin issue you have. The hardest thing in this business is to grow. So if you're looking to build a big business and you want to get what you want, the number that you want to look at is this number. This is the number that matters. This is the number that should go in your mirror. This is the number that should be in your office. This is the number that should be in your journal. This is the number that should be waking you up at night because you're excited. This is the one that you should feel pressure when you're coming down to the wire at the end of the year. This is the number that matters. Because if we can hit this every year, we're guaranteed to get to where we need to be, regardless of what other issues are happening in the agency, because those are easy to fix. That's why hedge funds buy something and then we hire somebody and they just cut and they fix that. That's simple. Entrepreneurship is about growth. And that's what your value is. That's what my value is, right? So finding that target, getting there, gets clarity on where you need to be. And now we're going to back into what these numbers are for the year. So capacity is the second portion of this. How many people do I need? What is their capacity to write? And what does that infrastructure look like, Brad? Right? And so based on what you're doing right now, I'd love to get your guys' opinion on this. How much annual revenue can one agent produce in your market? Let's just use, and I'll use an example based on what anybody says. Does anybody know, based upon, they're probably not at capacity, they're probably not writing at full capacity they are, but based on where your benchmarks are right now, and based on what you think that they can do, whether you're doing personal lines, commercial lines, what is an annual revenue amount that you'd feel comfortable to say that somebody's at 90% of their capacity?
Hey, Brett, in my area, personal lines, I would say between 60,000 to 80,000 annual revenue for the agency.
Fantastic. Thank you, Michael. That's awesome feedback. And we're very similar in different areas down here. Yep. Anybody else? Cool. Let's use that. So let's call it 70K, Michael, just for purposes of get in the middle. So I would put $70,000 here and say, okay, perfect. So I can get $70,000 in revenue from one team member at optimal performance. Okay. Now I want to know how many leads they can handle. So we work off a referral model. So a lot of real estate closings. We get referrals come in, we close those referrals, we make revenue. Very simple. Yes, there are internet leads. Yes, we have warm market. Yes, we have referrals from existing clients. But the primary top of the funnel for us, everybody has a primary top of the funnel, which means I know what activity I need to do and I can control my destiny. I can't control whether Nancy refers me a piece of business and she's been a client for 3 years, right? That's not a metric that I'm going to drive my entire business off of. I'm expecting those, but I can't control those actions half the time. But what I can control is how many referrals I get for closings, because I can go out in the market and I can ask for that business, right? So prospecting, commercial leads, how many cold calls you make, like, right? There is some sort of primary top of the funnel in your specific agency that is going to drive whatever activity to create those leads. So I look at how many true referrals did we get in the last 12 months. And true referrals are real estate and mortgage professionals that have sent us business. And I write that number down for the whole agency. And then I look at how much new business revenue did we write for the whole agency. And that's going to give me my value of that referral. Now you could replace referral with lead. How many leads did you generate? Not like real leads. You cold called, you got a lead, that's your lead. Call that a true lead, right? You derived it from your activity, didn't just walk in the door. And if it walked in the door because you prospected somebody, that's different. I would count that. But I would have that set up in your AMS or your CRM, and I would look at the difference between what a true lead is and what something is that's overflow. So then we're going to get a value of that lead. Once I have that value of the lead, now I can calculate everything that I want to know within the agency. Okay, so I'll run this real quick and then we'll get into some Q&A because I know this can be a lot. So I'm taking the current agency revenue. I'm going to do my compound growth rate for the first year, and that's going to give me what I want to end 2024 with, that year-end revenue. Okay, right? Very simple. I'm taking what I currently have times the compound growth rate I got. That's going to get me the year-end revenue. Okay, that year-end revenue minus your current is going to give you what the delta is. So if I'm at 100K now and I want to get to 200 grand, I know that this production need is I need $100,000 in new business revenue production. Very simple, right? Then I'm taking that production needed divided by the value of that lead, the value of that referral that we just calculated. That's going to give me how many leads I need for the year, how many referrals I need for the year. Divide that by 12. That's how much it is in monthly. Okay. And then once I have how much I can write, which is 70,000, Michael, we just discussed that, right? We're going to come down here. I know that I can get $70,000 in production out of that performing producer divided by the value of the referral.
Sorry, Brett, I think you got to update your screen. It's still on my end. It's showing the calculator.net site still. No
Thank you, buddy. Thank you. Yeah, I'm walking through this. Apologize, guys. So real quick, thank you for saying that, Sean. So real quick, agency revenue growth rate, that's going to get me. I'm trying to get my delta. Where I am and where I need to be is my production needed. Okay. Once I have my production needed, I'm going to get my leads, right? I'm going to get the number of leads I need divided by 12. Okay. That's going to give me how many leads or how many referrals I needed for the month right here. And then I'm taking capacity, which is 70K, like Michael said right here. How much can I write? 70K for one producer, divided by the value of that lead. That's going to give me my capacity to be able to handle that business. How many leads can one producer handle? That's an important metric, right? Because you want somebody to be at optimal capacity. And then you want to know how many you need, because what we're trying to figure out for this, because we're a team building model, is because once I take the amount of leads that I need divided by the capacity of the agent, it tells me how many agents I need for the year. Okay. And so I know that at the end of this first year, once I do this calculation, I'm going to get how many agents are required in order for me to get there. I might need to hire 2 people. But if you don't know this and you say, we're just going to do more leads, we're just going to get more leads, we're going to grow revenue, what is going to happen is you're going to run into a capacity issue. You're going to get halfway through the year and be like, oh, shit, we don't have enough resources to be able to do this. And so what will end up happening in this process is you'll run into it and you'll get stuck. And you'll go, oh, shoot, based on my numbers, I need 3 new agents. Well, I'm not willing to hire 3 new agents. That's too much. Well, at least now we have eyes wide open and we know that, okay, my aspirations are bigger than my stomach to pay the price or my resources to pay the price. And you can harness back your goals. But now we have a realistic snapshot of where we need to be. It's mathematical. It's an equation that we can follow and we can get gritty with it. And then what we do is we do this exact same process all the way to 5 years. And this document form fills. Once you've done one, it basically will form fill for the next 5 years. But now I have a blueprint of how many leads I need and how many agents I need in order to get to whatever outcome that I said I wanted, which, by the way, that outcome is based upon the compound growth rate that we stated at the beginning. So I know that's a lot, especially because I didn't have it on the screen, but I wanted to kind of open up for any questions and any thoughts. And if you've ever done any exercise like that before, guys.
Would you change some of this formula, based on, a few of the people that answered, the question of, what is most important to you, owner's comp, they're 2-3 years into the business. So would you change the formula for somebody that's, just getting started? I think the most important, to back up to one of the most important things that you mentioned, was you have to define how much you need to take home. Mm-hmm. And you can start to base some of these other spending decisions on that. But for a guy like, Steven, for example, he's going into his second year. What is realistic? I think it's easy to say, yeah, well, you need 2 agents to get there. Can I afford it? Probably not. But I do like the idea of at least planning for it. Here's where I'd like to be at the end of the year, and reverse engineer. Okay, well, how do I get there if it's just Steven? Would you alter that formula at all?
I think, yeah, absolutely. As far as from a margin perspective, yes. Is that what you're asking, Brad? As far as if it's just me?
Yes. Yeah. Basically, if you're a solo person, you probably have aspirations to hire. Really difficult decisions to make. Do I go to a service, or do I go to a production? When you don't have the funds, they're much more difficult decisions.
Yep. I think there's a couple things. I have a couple thoughts on that, Brad. I think if you get to the point where you don't have the funds, you're probably not ready to hire, because we need to max out our capacity and build it way past what's reasonable first. And once that thing is about to absolutely break, and we're going to break, then it's time to go, okay, cool. Let's go ahead and put something underneath it. Which, by the way, I think that's a very different process than once you get later on, right? The variance for which that you have the autonomy to be able to push it is less later on, where in the beginning, it's like you have to push it so far past what is reasonable because you can take it. Your team won't be able to take it, but you can take it. And you also need to maintain a lifestyle, right? So I think in the beginning, to answer your question, I think starting small, but then asking yourself the question of like, I also think people think that their margins are going to, you need to be able to calculate what it's going to be. Your margin is going to change once you start hiring. And where I see a challenge with new operators is they get used to the margins that they're pulling. And it's an unrealistic expectation. It's an unrealistic cycle to go through. So what I would challenge you guys and whoever may be in this boat is pick a static number. Like we started, what is the minimum I need? That is a very, very important part of this exercise. And don't move it, because once you start growing past what's possible, once you start growing past what your capacity is, all of that extra white meat, that is the resources that you're going to use to get that next person on the bus. And then once you get about 2 people on the bus, the game changes. The game changes because the equilibrium kicks in. You go, okay, so this is what a margin looks like. This is normalized. Okay, cool. Now I got to work within this framework. This is how I increase my owner's compensation based upon this margin. Whereas before, when it was just me, I was used to making 70%, 80% of the gross commissions, and I was taking it home. So I got used to that. Now you might say, well, I need all that to be able to maintain my lifestyle. Then the answer is yes, you're right. So then how much in revenue do we need to create just with us and keeping that number static to get to the point where we have some resources to be able to go on the offensive? So I think, yes, Brad, in the beginning, when it's just you, those margins absolutely change. But I think the biggest one on that is pick a number and don't change it.
Yeah.
Don't change it. Because otherwise you're in the wrong business. Like we shouldn't be agency owners. We should be elite producers.
I mean, can you hear me? Sorry.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
go
Josh,
ahead.
hang on. Josh, hold that
Yeah.
thought for just 1 second. I know we just
Oh.
hit an hour, so I want to make sure for respect of everybody's time. Brett, you have a few more minutes to finish these questions. You're good? Okay. All right, go ahead, Josh. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that in a hard market that I'm seeing is my goal today might be it's easy to plan for a year, but in the market that we're in, it's almost quarter to quarter, in my opinion. And especially, no matter what size agency you're in. I know my agency, every point matters. We have carriers starting to change commissions, quarterly. So I think for me and my agency, it's not survival. We want to thrive, but at the same time, it's hard to plan for 5 years out when right now my revenues change quarterly. I mean, it's just realistic where we're at right now in the market, if that makes sense.
Are you in Florida? Because man, you're talking my language right now.
No, I'm in PA. I'm actually in a great state, but I know, how we're trying to grow quick here too. But unfortunately, carriers are pulling back. So my plan, it's evolving. Instead of, last year I wanted to really, really focus on new business, but in a hard market, you kind of we transitioned away from that, and I moved more in acquisition mode. So I just think, it's great to plan. For me, you ought to have the 5-year plan, but at the same time, you don't want to run, too lean, because every commission point, it matters not when you're a year in, but it matters when you're 10 years in, like me, especially, when you're trying to push this ship forward.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's a great perspective. Look, there's no magic bullet to that. I have an opinion, and it's just my opinion. Because trust me, I mean, we had 13% commissions go to 6. I mean, we had to move. We never wrote a piece of business with Citizens, which is the state-funded insurance that pays 5.5%, and in a year, it's the biggest carrier in our entire office. So, from a revenue perspective, I mean, we probably lost 20% of revenue, but we still grew by 30%. So I would just challenge you to say, number one, is that your belief? Is that accurate, or is that perception? So, and I'm not challenging you, but I am asking just a question. Is it possible to still write new business? And yes, you'd have to write more, but the premiums have probably gone up in a hard market, and it's probably harder. It's probably less competitive because people are reeling back and are going on defense. So I would just ask, is that an accurate statement, or is that just the feeling that we get because it's tough. And I think it's a reasonable statement because it's true. And then it comes down to your threshold. Maybe you're not comfortable with the risk that comes from going on offense, and you just decide for your preference it makes more sense for you to shift, and that's okay too, right? It's I don't think there's a time to just be full offense all the time. I'm not one of those guys, but I do think there's a unique threat when you are in this smaller stage that if you don't figure out the growth thing, you will get static. It's extremely, extremely, extremely important in the beginning of the business to make sure you know that this is a vital time, because this is why people don't make it. This is why agents don't get past it, because they're just not willing to die on the hill. And it has to be life or death for you, because if you don't get to a certain threshold, the risk of you running out of money is not the risk. The risk is you quitting. It's not worth it. You'll wake up one day and you'll just say, I'm ready to sell. It happens every single day. So for me, my personal ideology is like, it's just balls to the wall. Once we get to here, at least we'll be able to figure it out. But I think that just comes down to maybe, I think that's a personal question. And that's just, so it's just an opinion for me. I will tell you, we've been in the hardest market in the history of Florida, period, hands down, not even close. It's a total disaster down here. And we've written more business this year with one market. Nobody wanted to write Citizens. Every agent has complained that it's a commission cut. Every agent said it doesn't make sense for us to go out and get new business because we can't do it profitably. So we said, screw it. We're going to go gain market share. We're going to make all of our money in owner benefit and increased value of acquisition of the business. We're going to grow top line. We're going to do it at a very large, small margin. And then when the market comes back, it'll be fine. We'll get a yield from that. So it's just for me, I think it's a shift in thinking. And I think a lot of agents are thinking, because it's a hard market, I have to play defense. The answer is yes, there are going to be more phone calls that come in. Yes, people are upset about their rates. Yes, you're going to have to do remarkets. I would just ask you, what would have to happen for you to do something different than the person that's getting their butt kicked and is on defense? Start asking those questions. It might be, man, it's going to require me to work more hours, or it's going to require me to hire somebody before I'm ready. It's going to require me to get uncomfortable, and run it thin. I don't know the answer, but I hope that gives you context. I don't know if I can answer that. I think that's a personal question. I can just give you my perspective just from us dealing with it down here.
Hey, Brett, I actually have some feedback on that. The way I've built my agency is exactly the same way you're describing it. I basically set a number and then I try to figure out a way to get there. And I want to challenge everyone's thinking, because the insurance companies, for example, have programs where they will lend you money to hire a producer, and you can get some of that, money forgiven with your production. The SBA has programs. But when you set that goal, you also look at maybe your owner's compensation. Maybe you're not giving yourself a raise for 1 or 2 years, to get to where you need to be. So I think it's all about setting the goal and then letting your mind get creative on reaching that goal, and challenge yourself to dream and to set big goals so you can achieve them. So that's kind of what I've got from this and how I've built my agency.
That's great context, man. Yeah, for me, that's why the owner benefit number is important to me, because candidly, there's a long time where we didn't make any money. But I looked at that number because that's what pulled me to go, okay, it's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it. And there's just a period in time where you're going to have to trick the mind to go hard in the paint with, taking a significantly less amount than you could or should. And that's just the pain of this business. It just is what it is. I will tell you it's worth it. And when you get to the other side, everybody wants an annuity that continues to pay you, but nobody wants to pay the price, and everybody on this call is different. You are willing to pay the price, but there's a reason why this is the best business in the world, but it's not without a cost. So anybody else? Good thoughts.
Yeah, so our agency is actually relatively young still, but we've done a lot of what you're doing already, and kind of what you highlight here, Brett. What we noticed on the front end, all the algorithms, all the staffing issues, all the commissions, all the cuts, velocity changes the conversation. When we look at the market and we look at, we should be doing 50 quotes a month, 100 quotes a month, however that looks, whatever that number is. When we look at velocity, and I can onboard 25% more clients this year, knowing that I don't have the staff to manage it today, but that staffing management doesn't kick in day one, right? All that can be offset by either process, number one, by having a defined process, or number two is knowing I need to generate 25% more leads, 25% more revenues, and I can hire that person and scale that back or scale that up as we go. And we have lived in that velocity mindset for the last 21 months since we started this entity, and we're on that verge, right? You talk about it. We've said this before, right? We didn't take a paycheck for 15 months. I get one now. That's good. Like, high five me.
Yeah.
Next year's hopefully bigger. Year after is going to be a lot better, right? There's some good things there. So investing in that infrastructure and that process, but understanding the velocity matters. You can do all the algorithms and calculations in the world, and you can see it all. And everything that you're showing here is like, I want to highlight the value of that. But understanding that no matter what you do, you just get up, make one more phone call, find one more staff person, find one more process that brings in that extra piece. That velocity solves a lot of freaking problems.
Yeah, that's a great perspective. Yeah, like, so do you like a cost of acquisition is one. Like, so we know that a producer, whatever we pay them the first year, they're going to make, we're going to get that return. So it's a 1-to-1 ratio. If it costs us 50 grand for that producer, we're going to make 50 grand. And so again, if I look at an extra expense of 50 grand, that sounds like a lot, right? But it's a bi-weekly thing. I'm slowly building them up. In the beginning, they're not going to produce, but after about 2, 3, 4, 5 months, now it's starting to pay for itself, right? So there is if you can, like, I love that perspective. If your sales velocity can increase, then you can ride that expense curve with a increased top line revenue curve. So once you've done this once or two times, it isn't as scary as it looks. But on paper, if I look and I go, I need 2 people, that's $100,000 more expenses. How the hell am I going to do that? Well, the answer is you have to move top line. You have to move top line, and you should anticipate moving top line. And if you have a lead mousetrap that works consistently based on effort that you put in, and you can teach that to people, it will become less scary because you can get a consistent outcome. It's a predictable process. Where it becomes scary is, Patrick, to your point, is if it's not predictable and you're making that leap, I would say that you're too early, because it should be predictable for you. You should know how much effort you have to be put in order to generate a lead and then to close it. And if you are comfortable with that, then you should be able to teach someone how to do that. And there are going to be situations where people don't work out, of course, but it will significantly lower the action threshold, because you'll be willing to do it because you know that, it's not necessarily just magic that these leads show up. It's because I have a specific defined activity that I do. And if I do it enough, I get a result. Great thoughts.
Man, such good stuff. Brett, we're going to probably look to wrap this up. We already ran over out of respect to your time. On behalf of Sean and I and the podcast and everybody here, man, thank you so much. That was such good stuff. This is recorded, obviously, so we're going to make sure we get it out as an episode so we can go back to it. But, thank you very much for taking the time and being here.
Thank you, Brett.
What's the best way for people to get in touch with you, Brett, if they want to pick your brain a little bit more on this stuff?
Oh man, in the community, I just would encourage the listeners of the show to join the community. There's a lot of really talented people in here, and the feedback and consistency of you guys is inspiring. I love it. So I learn a lot just from a lot of the stuff that everybody puts in. So I mean, that's a great place to connect right now, man. Yeah.
Awesome. And so if you might be listening to this through the podcast and you're listening about that, scratchagencypodcast.com, you can join the Telegram. That's what Brett's talking about in the community. Got about 30 people in there now, a ton of value. For those who are listening to the podcast, thanks for joining us. Do us a favor, like the show, share the show, and subscribe. Most importantly, especially after today, remember to dig down deep, believe in yourself, in your future. We'll see you next week. Take care.